Alright guys, TacticalRab back again today. Hope you're all doing well and enjoying your day so far. Welcome back to Valorant News, and a major day in the Valorant world as a coaching bug has been discovered that will give coaches in certain situations free information as to the location of the enemy team in a very similar way to the Counter-Strike coaching scandal that we have seen over the last couple of years. Does this mean that coaches have been abusing this over the last several months? Will an investigation follow? Very intriguing questions to dive into today. Very much intrigued to hear your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you are new as always. I would greatly appreciate it. Really have said the channel. Thank you very much indeed for doing that one. Plenty to discuss today. Thanks for all the support recently as well. Well, let's just crack straight on with things. Firstly, this from Guild. Trex, a Russian player on their roster, will be attending Masters 2. He has acquired the appropriate visa. This definitely is a good sign for FPX, for example. That at FPX, of course, they're kind of worried about Shao and Saigetsu, even Angel, whether they will be able to get the appropriate permissions and visas and all this type of stuff to attend Masters 2 in Copenhagen. But Trex has made it happen on Guild, so that's good for them. They get to play with their team. So apparently rumors were servicing that they would be ineligible to play, but apparently that's not the case. Guilds can go with the roster they want to compete with. Now, I wanted to mention Exit real quick because we generally see that when teams do interviews like this, it doesn't always work out for them so well in the long run. We'll see if it kind of, it works out for Exit right here, or whether it does not, because an interview came out with them after, of course, qualifying for Masters 2 Copenhagen and also winning the entirety of, the North American playoffs. BCJ said some rather interesting words here for Stacks over at DRX. So a lot of people are looking at Stacks and players in those regions and saying, okay, wow, this guy's just out of control. So much talent on this roster. I mean, DRX didn't even lose a map this entire stage in the Korean side, right? Because, look, they're not playing competition as high as they are when they get to an international event, and we'll see if they can, make a better run at Masters 2 than they did at Manage at Masters 1. But BCJ says from Xed, everyone always says he's the best initiator in the world, talking about Stacks. I say, hell no, that's not the case. He is somebody that's from a worse region, and he's getting way too much credit. The guy is doing nothing special, and I do believe that myself and Crashies, of course, from OpTic, are the two best initiators in the world by far. So quite the statement really here for BCJ. I always want to mention stuff like this because the way that kind of the Valorant gods work is that when someone says something like this, it'll end up being that Exit will play DRX and Stacks will drop like 50 kills to knock him out of the tournament. Probably that won't happen now because I've said it, I've probably jinxed it, but you know what I mean? It's just interesting things to keep your eyes on because we see this a few times where players say certain words and then they don't always, it doesn't always work out too well for them, right? I think we saw it with, what was it, 100 Thieves, and they said that, okay, like Exit, they don't really have the heavy hitters or whatever it was, and then I think maybe Stella said that, and then they played them, and then 100 Thieves got destroyed by the heavy hitters of Exit. You could argue Zeko and Crycells turned up, so always an interesting one. DRX versus Exit, that will be a spicy series if it does happen at Masters Copenhagen. And then also, Zekin doesn't really want to say too much about it. He said, okay, he wants to play Forsaken for, I believe, the Paper X size, probably just because they're such an exciting team to watch and probably to play against as well. So yeah, definitely an interesting thing to keep your eyes on there. Wanted to mention this real quick from the APAC region as well, because this is Bodork's idea of what might happen in terms of the spots for this region. I think he seems to believe right now that there will only be 10 spots in the kind of franchising partnership leagues, which if that's the case in APAC, there'll only be 10 spots there, 10 spots in North America, you would guess as well. And we were hoping there'd be at least like 12 spots, because if there's only 10, I imagine they're going to have probably 3 teams from Latin America, Central America, South America, right? And then 7 teams from North America, you would imagine. I think that's probably what they'll think about doing if they do that in NA. This is what he reckons for APAC, right? Potentially 1 team from Oceania, 2 from Korea, 2 from Japan, 3 from Southeast Asia, 1 from China, and 1 from South Africa, because I guess that's part of the same region. I suppose they fit in there better than they do anywhere else, right? So yeah, I mean, interesting stuff if that does turn out to be true. Of course, no guarantees that this will be the case, but that's kind of his theory, knowing the scene, that this might be what they decide to do going into next season. North Epsilon and Zeta, you'd imagine, would be the 2 front runners in the Japanese side based on recent results. Also showing this, that Renegades are looking to acquire free agent roster Bobo from, again, the Oceania region, the second best roster in that region, right? So it is interesting to see these organizations because, obviously they've got to make a decision as to whether they decide to go all in on Valorant and try and make it work and get into the partner league for next year, or whether they say, okay, look, we're not going to bother, we're going to call it a day. But Renegades getting this organization shows that they're serious as an organization, really, to rights to say, look, we want to get a spot in your effectively APAC league. I imagine what it's going to be going into next year. So we'll see if that comes to fruition, but it's a possibility at the very least. But these teams, I'm sure some of these teams are going to waste a lot of money because they're going to try and prove to right that they're deserving of a spot, and then they'll get denied, because of course most organizations will get denied the right to partnership. Let's talk about this then, right? So a big bit of news really that's coming out, a spectator bug. This immediately thought, okay, wow, this is Counter-Strike V2. People meme, of course, about Valorant copying Counter-Strike, and they managed to even copy their coaching bug as well. But yes, seemingly there's different coaching bugs here as well. It's not just one spectator bug. There's potentially many spectator bugs, which supposedly shows a red dot where an enemy was, even if they were not seen. Now, apparently, North American coaches have also seen this bug occur multiple times. The crazy thing about this is, to me, that let's say say, like, this has happened in Counter-Strike as well, where coaches discovered the bug. We'll talk about what the bug was in CS here in a second, because it's slightly different. But, I mean, they discovered it, told Valve about it in CSGO's case, but still, some of them were abusing it, some of them didn't want to say, some of them kind of kept it hidden, especially because in Valorant, there's no replay system, right? Like, if you're a coach and I get this particular spectator bug, and I can see where the enemies are, I can relay that information to my team in a timeout or whatever, or I can just say something in the communication, because even there was drama about that, right, during kind of some of the qualifying online matches, that coaches were in the Discord talking to their players, and no one was any the wiser, even though that's not actually allowed by the rules, because G2 kind of had a bit of drama about that as well, and other organizations that help Sua's stuff, when kind of the coach of T1 typed that in the chat, and then that information that came through, you know, who knows how we got that information, right? Did he get that information through a coaching bug? Who knows? But like, potentially the coaches could get this bug, they could you know, kind of relay some information to the players, creating an unfair competitive environment, even if they only use that information to, when they go into a timeout, then they can say, okay, look, this is what they were doing when this happened, this is what they were doing when this happens, and I'm sure the players might think, okay, where did he get that information from? I guess he's watching really intently, but turns out maybe you got the information from a spectator bug, and because there's no replay viewer, how are you actually ever going to catch these guys? Like, unless these coaches have great integrity, which clearly what we saw in the Counter-Strike world, they don't, because an awful lot of them got banned as a result of this stuff, and got exposed because people went back and looked at the VODs and said, yes, he was getting the bug, he was abusing the glitch, therefore we got to get him banned. I'm not sure they can get caught in Valorant necessarily, and if that's the case, then I wouldn't be surprised at all if some coaches have been abusing this. So I'm frankly rather surprised that I haven't heard of this until now. I don't know if you guys have heard about this before as well. I guess, like, you know, how many players really go into the coaching side to even discover this type of stuff? Probably not all that often. But yeah, apparently Brazilian coaches have discovered this one. The bug allows the team spectator to get information about the opponent, position on the minimap. It's been occurring for at least 2 months on all maps. What happens is the opposing agent on the minimap sometimes becomes a red ball without even being spotted. Like, well, the failure does not occur instantly, but it's not yet known what triggers the bug. Now, apparently Riot are aware of this issue, hasn't yet found a solution. So Riot knows about it. They're looking into a solution, and Valve didn't really do that for, oh, well, too long, effectively. But this doesn't necessarily mean that matches over the last several months, or potentially in the future, could get affected by something just like this. So this was actually mentioned here in the replies, is that it was a known issue for about a year, he reckons, in all regions, like known issues on position when enemies were at some point, even 2 rounds ago. Apparently, like, you can know about that in random position on the map where the enemy was last seen, get certain, like, kind of, well, circles, different colors on the map, like, randomly see enemies on the minimap as well, apparently. So there's some crazy stuff that apparently can happen here. Now, seemingly it happens when players disconnect and then rejoin the lobby. That might be one of the key causes of this bug. This even he mentions he saw back in January, the 10th of January. If you guys look under the full screen image here, you can see that on the bottom side, I suppose this is from his perspective as a coach, he can see some of the players, some of the CT players, trying to retake the site here from CT on Ascent, and he even gets the knowledge on the minimap as well up in the top left-hand corner. So this is just one example, right? He can actually see them kind of through the Astra mode. Like, you can see it during, like, when he's spectating his kind of player that's using Astra, he can see this type of stuff on the minimap and all this type of stuff as well. So crazy scenes. And this isn't just that. There was another example here that, well, Enox comes out with, head coach for the TSM Academy, that, I mean, you can see on the left-hand side, when he's spectating his team, he can see all these yellow dots, and these yellow dots might be kind of exactly what, like, there's some sort of, like, cam glitch he's getting here, but he can see all the yellow dots on the map right on the left-hand side, which is that, well, the last seen location of, like, pretty much all of these players. So he could theoretically, like, if this wasn't an official game, he could tell his team, like, or at least give some indication as to where these guys are. Now, of course, like, players with integrity, coaches with integrity wouldn't do that, but of course, we saw in Counter-Strike that many players were doing exactly that over, well, a prolonged period, and especially if there's no replay viewer and these guys and these coaches don't think they can get caught, I wouldn't be surprised at all if they've been trying this for many months. Another example I saw right here on Reddit, where, I mean, you can see in the minimap on the top left-hand side, this is from the coach's point of view, you can see all these purple dots, which represent all the enemy locations, where, of course, like, he wasn't saying to his team anything, but, like, he was getting all this free information, right? And, like, you can see it again on the retake, it's essentially just the live positioning of all the players on the minimap, where, of course, like, theoretically, you could do whatever you wanted to do to relay something to the rest of your team, especially in crucial games. So, I mean, yeah, this is honestly a really big deal, right? This is a spectator bug, it's happened again, and it might be a relatively easy fix, or potentially, like, how this happens is well known and documented, and therefore team organizers and, like, tournament organizers can get around it, as he kind of describes right here. Context: the team I was coached for was scrimming against a random team we found on Discord. The other team had some suspect plays, nothing that couldn't reasonably be the product of good game sense, pretty good luck. Round 20, our Cypher's power went out, he disconnected, but it never took him out of the game, and the round after, these little purple dots started showing up on my minimap to show effectively where the enemies were. These dots lasted the rest of the game and overtime, but didn't really appear when we started our next game on Bind against the same opponents. Has this happened to anyone before? Now, apparently tournament organizers know about this. The fix is for the player in the coach slot to restart their game after the disconnected player rejoins. rejoin. So apparently this is known about, and like they can get around this, but still that doesn't necessarily explain all the situation here. Like it's not always maybe happening because a player disconnects and rejoins. There might be other triggers that this occurs for, and apparently people have known about this for at least 6 months or so, and really like there hasn't been that much talk about it, right? Which is kind of what happened in Counter-Strike as well, where kind of players and coaches knew about this, but nothing was really said because they kind of wanted to keep it a secret maybe so they could, well, use this to their advantage, especially because if there's no, as I say, replay viewer, I don't know if it's ever going to be possible for some of these like former VCT games, like for anyone to actually go back even in the future and look at the kind of the matches, like the demo, and look at whether the coach would have had any of this information, especially because like the coach of the bug isn't the same in the Valorant side here as it is in Counter-Strike. In Counter-Strike, you could go back and watch the game in the demo viewer and see where the coach was, because the bug was different in Counter-Strike. We'll see here in a second. But in Valorant, this bug is arguably undetectable. Now, and look, whether there's a scandal to come from this, who knows? Whether if any coaches are abusing this, will try and continue to do so, who knows? Whether any have been, I don't know either. But like I'm just looking at the history, I'd be surprised if, well, if no one actually abused this in a match. And even this implies from some actual coaches. Don Hassey goes, no way Valorant even stealing the coach bugs, and Chet says from OpTic, and they still won't catch me, right? So kind of saying that, yeah, obviously he's tongue-in-cheek here, being sarcastic, but I mean, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if he's thinking, like, yeah, damn, some of these other coaches might have been doing some dodgy stuff here. Now, in Counter-Strike, the bug was slightly different, right? So instead of seeing the players on the minimap, the coach would sometimes get, like, lodged in, well, effectively a skybox position, somewhat like this, right? Where the coach just effectively gets to look at the entire map and potentially relay information. This is being done on a wide scale by many coaches for, well, several years, and, well, people were able to look into this from the E6 side, the kind of integrity commission, and look back and find the pros that did this, or find the kind of coaches that did this, and ban them, give the appropriate sanctions. In Valorant, because the bug is different, they're not kind of hiding in a skybox, they're just spectating a player. Like, it's pretty much impossible to say whether this was happening in any official games. So very much intrigued to your thoughts on this in the comment section. I'm sure there might be some further updates on this in the coming days, but definitely does raise some interesting questions about, you know, whether any teams have been abusing this stuff over the past pretty much several months of games. And the final thing just to mention, of course, is today, it's, well, the final team will get determined as to who's actually going to go to Masters Copenhagen, the last chance qualifier in the Latin American Brazilian region, where Crew Esports will take on Ninjas in Pajamas. I still think I want to favour Crew here, but yeah, we'll see how it does end up going. But very much intrigued to your thoughts on all this stuff in the comment section below. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did enjoy it, hit the like button. Tell us on YouTube, gods, this is a good video. I just like you should see it as well, and help grow the competitive Valorant community. Thank you for watching as always. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you next time.